I'm so excited today to work with you on still life painting. We were gonna do this before the social distancing rules happened, but that's okay because we're so lucky we can do this over video. So a still life painting means painting something that's very still, and you look at all the shapes and all the sizes and you try to paint that same picture onto your paper. Are you ready to start? Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go, friends. Now the first thing we need to do is to find a spot where you can paint that your grown-up says it's okay to paint on. Now I'm using my desk here in the office, but it's a very important desk to me. I built it with my own hands. I don't want to get paint on it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this towel that I don't mind getting dirty. You could see we drew on it, it says milestones on it, because it's an older towel that I don't mind getting messy. And I'm gonna cover my workspace with my towel so I don't get paint anywhere. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is find a piece of paper to paint on. So I'm gonna use this white paper so we could see. There we go. Now, next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find a still life that I wanna recreate or paint. And I love daisies. They're one of my favorite flowers. I even have a tattoo of it right here. I have 2 tattoos. And when I went out to our garden, I found this beautiful Gerber daisy growing in our garden. Now these are the daisy, this is from the daisy plant that Benji's daddy gave us. And they're doing so well in our garden, and I think it's because of all the love all you friends are giving it. Now, when we talk about still lifes, we also talk about being detectives, using your eyes to notice shapes around all the things we see. So I'm going to start with this piece of paper. And when we talk about shapes, I talk about, let's see, I'm going to find a marker so I can draw some shapes. We talk about what we see in our environment. So we might see things that are shaped in the shape of a circle. We might see shapes that kind of look like a square. We might see shapes that kind of look like an oval. We might see shapes that kind of look like a triangle. We might see shapes that kind of look like a rectangle. Every now and then we see shapes that are half circles. So it's kind of like this circle but cut in half. I also really like to talk about lines. Sometimes we see straight lines, sometimes we see wavy lines, sometimes we see zigzag lines, sometimes we see curly Q lines, sometimes we see dotted lines, spotted lines. So many different things we can see in our environment. So when I'm looking at my Gerber daisy, I think what I'd like to start with is the simplest shape. I see a circle right in there. Okay, so I like to use a marker for sketching. Some people prefer a pencil. I notice that with friends are your age, it's easier to use a marker because we can see the lines easiest when we're ready to paint. So I like to sketch out my plan first, and what I see here is I see a circle right in the middle. So I'm gonna draw that circle in first. Right there. See that? And then another thing I see is a circle around that circle. Oops, I drew on my flower. Circle around that circle. So I'm gonna do another circle around that circle. And then what I see are lots of beautiful petals. Now, when I've seen my friends draw petals, it's really neat what I've seen. I'm just gonna pick one petal so we can look at it. Now, I would say if I had to match this petal shape to any of the shapes, I think maybe I would match it possibly to the oval. Now, I might do the rectangle because it's long like a rectangle, maybe even a triangle, especially because it has this little tip right here. I might say, oh, it kind of looks like a triangle. Or I've also seen friends use lines to make a flower. You can pick whatever you want. It's really fun to watch how each friend draws or paints very differently. So I'm going to put this petal here just to keep my thoughts focused. Point this flower here so I could take a good look. And I decided I was going to do an oval. Oval. A long oval. I guess you could do short ovals. Let me have a little sketch, a little scratch paper. Oh, here, scratch paper is paper that you just practice on so that your final product can have the thing you like. So if I were to make a flower here, I guess I could do small ovals or I could do long ovals. I'm choosing to do long ovals, so I'll just continue. So I did half with marker and half with pencil and half with marker, just so you could see what some people choose. I made my petals really close together. You could also, if you wanted, if we were making a different flower, you could also make your petals far apart. Do whatever you want. You might even not want that little circle in the middle. Let me finish these petals really quickly. You might even just want one circle, you know, and maybe you want to use lines to make your petals, which is fine too, because when you go over it with a paintbrush, the petals will look thicker. You might even use a smaller circle and maybe like wavy lines to make your flower petals. I mean, really, there's no wrong way. It's just how you see the flower you're making. And you know, it doesn't have to just be a flower. You could grab anything from your house. Maybe you want to make a phone. You know, you think about the shapes that you have available to you and decide what shapes you want to put together to create, draw, make, whatever you want to make. So these are some examples of flowers. So here, let's go back to my original painting. Okay, so that's my sketch of my Gerber daisy. Let me smell it. It smells nice. Okay, now I need my cup of water. And one thing I talk to friends about is different size brushes. So different size brushes have different jobs. The bigger brushes are for big spaces. So when I'm ready to paint my background of my painting, I'm not gonna use a little tiny brush because look, it's gonna take me forever for me to paint the background. But if I use a big, huge brush, it's gonna cover space a lot faster. The little tiny brushes are for little tiny details. So if I'm gonna paint my background and I need to get really close to the petals, I'm gonna use a little tiny brush to get into the little tiny spaces. And if you look closer, see, I'm gonna need a little tiny brush. I'll use that one. And then this is kind of more of a medium-sized brush. Maybe as I get closer, maybe this middle part, who knows? We'll see. Now I'm going to show you my paints. So I've got white paint, got black paint, I've got red paint, I've got this like brownish maroon, and then I have some green. So I don't have yellow. I really wish I had yellow, but I couldn't find it. That's okay. So friends, I'm gonna take a look at the very middle of my flower. And in terms of the color, I wish I had some yellow, but I don't. So I'm just gonna use the green, and that's okay. It's okay to use different colors if you don't have other colors available. So I'm gonna use green, and I'm gonna dip it, and I'm going to paint the very middle green to show you my paints. So I've got white paint. Look what would happen if I used a big fat one. If I used a big one, it would cover the outside circle. I don't want to cover the outside circle. I only want to cover or paint in. So there, that's the middle. Now one thing I like to do, or it's important you do, is wash your brush really well. And when you wash, you kind of push down, swirl, push down, swirl, so that all the paint comes off. And see how there's just a little bit of green left there. If I don't wash my brush properly and I put this green inside my white, guess what? I won't have white anymore. I'm gonna have light green. I don't want that. So since there's a little bit left and it's not coming off, I'm just gonna wipe it on my towel. And I like to fold it over because if I don't get all the paint off my brush, I mean all the water out of my brush, and I put a soaking wet brush into my paints, it'll thin out the paint way too much, and then I won't be, it'll make my work runny. Okay, now outside of now this part is like a shade of this pink. I really like this red color, but what I really need to do is make pink. So I'm going to take my scratch paper that I had over here. I think that matches pretty good. What do you think? Okay. Now I'm going to paint the inside. Now, I want the outside petals to be a little different than the middle. So instead of using the same pink for the outside ones, I'm gonna add a little more white to the pink I have. I actually added a lot of white to this pink that I had. And I like this color pink. I think it's gonna work. Just stick to that every other petal was going to be a different color. I'm going to wash my brush. So last time I used a little bit of red. This time I'm going to use a little more red. And I'm gonna use just a little bit of white, not too much white, because I want to make a different color, different from the light pink I use. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of white. Gerber daisy. Kind of looks like the daisy over here. Doesn't have to look exactly the same. It could look a little different. And now, I don't have blue. I really wish I had blue, but I forgot to get the blue. Let me go get the blue, friends. I'll be right back. Friends, I found the yellow. I found the blue. They were hiding. Okay, here we go. So, now that I have the blue, I would like to paint a sky. But this blue is a little too dark, but that's okay because I'm gonna wash this brush off. Done with the small detailed brush. This brush is for details. I'm gonna use this brush. It's a little thicker than the one I was using. See, it has a little more hairs, thicker and wider. It's a flat brush. I'm gonna turn my paper over this way so I can mix a little bit of blue right in there. Maybe a little tiny bit more. There we go. Right there. I'm gonna wash my brush to take the dark blue out of it. A little more. I still see a little bit of paint on there. I don't want to put blue into my white paint because I want the white to stay true, fully white. I think that's good enough. I'm gonna scoop white. I'm gonna put it on the side because I think I'm gonna... That's the color I want. Now, I'm gonna start at the edge of the paper on the outside. So if I get too close to my flower, I'm worried my flower might get blue on it. And if it gets blue on it, guess what happens? It won't be the color that I wanted it to be. Now, see how I spread big clumps on it? That's just how I do it. You can do it however you want. I'm gonna go in and take a big brush. To the inside of a little closer to my flower, and I don't want to paint my flower, so I'm going to use a smaller size brush. Close to my flower, to the petals. This is when I want to switch. First, I'm going to wash this brush so it's ready in case I need it again later. Dry it off. Okay, now I'm going to switch to a tiny, tiny brush. Let's see, I think this one's good. This one's good. I like them to be shorter hair. I feel like I can control the brush. Oh, and friends, sometimes you might want to paint with the edge or the tip of the paintbrush. Push your hands a little closer to the bristles. You have more control of your brush that way. All right, here we go. Usually I probably would wait until it's more dry, but that's all right. This part is pretty dry. There. That's how I'm doing it. And then I like the yellow color, actually. It's yellow on the flower, so I'm going to use a little bit of yellow too. A little bit of yellow on my brush. And I'm going to ta-da! Ta-da! There you go. Some people like to outline their work. Typically when I'm working with the friends, I have them outline their work with a Sharpie after the whole thing dries. If you want to be adventurous, you could use a very thin brush and trace around. Is this part dry? Yeah, this part's dry. I think I'm gonna make a little bumblebee because you know bees love flowers. So I'm gonna make a little circle for the head. Little oval. Remember we talked about our shapes? I'm using a circle for the head and an oval for the body. Very fun. It's fun to paint. All right, friends. So that's how you make a still life. Don't forget to think about shapes and sizes and big brushes and little brushes and details. And you don't have to do this all in one day. At Milestones, we would not do it in one day. We would do it in a lot of days because we go step 1, step 2, step 3. Friends get very tired, and then what ends up happening is sometimes we paint on top of our work. So Milena will say, draw a circle. Okay, stop. Draw the next. Okay, stop. Practice on this paper. Okay, stop. Now put it on your actual work. Okay, stop. So it takes a while, and this is kind of like a crash course. All right, friends. Hope to see your work when you get back to school. Bye.